interested in observing people and my circumstances around me, like micro-historical moment that, we don't see things in the history book and we don't see them on TV because they are not important, but they're part of us, they're part of our history. I was born and grew up in a small town, rural small town called Wagan. It's located on the outskirts of Daegu, one of the largest cities in South Korea. I was a very shy kid with a stutter, and not only did I love painting and drawing, but also I discovered a joy in teaching and in sharing how to create art. When I was in 5th grade, my teacher had me take over her art classes so she could take a break. So that in a moment stayed with me. When I was 15, I also discovered Kira Kalvitz's prints and drawings, the German female artist. So I made a mind that I want to really study printmaking. My father wanted me to be a lawyer, and so when I told him that I want to be an artist, and he was like, "No, you're gonna starve to death." When I came to the United States, I had a very rough start. I didn't speak English, so I not only learning a new language, but also adopting new culture was extremely difficult for me. I decided to come here for my second NFA. I started my first semester in the fall of 2001. And I came here 2 weeks before the 9/11. If I could have, if I would have, wait 2 more weeks, then maybe I wouldn't be here. I became really drawn to animation rather than book art since after I saw William Kendry's retrospective. This is my first animation. When I looked at William Kendry's work, then I could see the process really helped me a lot to look at, to give me kind of confidence that I can actually make stop motion animation without learning it. That didn't look too hard to make. I set up my tripod and a camera, and then, okay, I'm gonna draw this. I gradually talked about my experience of living between 2 cultures and striving for visibility through my practice. When I started printmaking, I hated, making editions because, over and over again, you have to make the same prints over and over again, and then my prints never be perfect. Always something like, when I make one print and so I wanted to add one more color or different color or one more line and 2 lines more. And then I really like, all my test prints, and my professor was, no, you have to choose one. So that kind of approach to printmaking aligned with, how I make animations. So this is like kind of starting point of this show, and showing this earthquake, natural disaster, the view of natural disasters. But it's not actually about the natural disasters. It's more about the ground that we are standing on is not stable. It's unpredictable, but we are standing on it. We have kind of enough power to go through it. That connects to, again, resilience that, the swimmer over there, and the title is, strokes every day. So it's about, any kind of activities, any kind of strokes we are making to go through a day and, every day. This is, 8-panel, painting series, and based on my daughter, practicing her swimming. But it's not about her practicing swimming. It's more about, general idea that we are, resilient to present, to be present, whatever circumstances we are in. It's 8-panel, and 8 means infinite. So it also refers the cyclical, everydayness. When I use colors, I have to, so sort of it has to emotionally make sense to me. This one is a stop motion animation painted on marble, bathroom tile. It's watercolor on bathroom tile, and I really like the kind of fluid of watercolor and the impermanence of the watercolor, that it could easily erase and add it and then bleed, right? I wanted to talk about between the being private and being public, and being vulnerable and then being empowered. I believe lines have so many emotions. They carry so many different emotions. So I love line drawings, and that's why I love etching. So when I want to evoke some kind of like various feelings, various emotions, I go with etching animation, or just etching, print animation. But then when I want to focus on some kind of environment, some kind of like surrounding, then I go with kind of monochromatic colors, like an woodcut. And the woodcut is really good medium. It's a really good technique, perfect technique to add colors. This stop motion is called Birth. It's very personal. So I made this one right after my second daughter was born. I had to put it aside for years because it felt like too close. It felt too emotional. It felt too vulnerable. I wanted to share these kind of feelings with others, with people who have the similar experience. Gradually, I kind of built some kind of like distance, and now looking back and my experience, I understand why I felt that way. I returned to the piece last year, and I complete the final touches. Now I'm showing the animation, and now I understand why I felt too much. I felt too vulnerable, and then now I've embraced my feelings that time. This is the series from Passersby. And Passersby is focused on Asian hate crime during the pandemic. These animations are based on the surveillance video footage. Passersby 1 is an elderly Asian woman got thrown to the ground by a stranger on the street, and she ended up with 10 stitches on her head. And Pesos by 2 is a monotype print animation. It's made with leftover coffee, and I wanted to evoke kind of feelings of dried blood. This elderly Asian woman got attacked and stomped on the ground by a stranger, and what struck me the most was that all the hotel lobby workers were watching that instant and didn't do anything. At the end, they closed the door. I was so upset when I saw that, but it's not like Asian hate crime wasn't there before. It's more like, during the pandemic, there are more crimes going on. I start with sketches, I start with idea. Then I get some footage and then see, because I need to get some movement. So footage and my idea become sort of like, my sketch, my primary sketch. And then I choose the plate that I want to work with. Why I chose yellow Post-it is because also I love the yellow, the color yellow, but also it's more like it could carry a metaphor. So it could be a metaphor of an Asian, like yellow fever, like the racial slur. So this is 3-channel animation, tourist. It's based on my, few of my footage, recording, capturing tourists looking at the scene further away, and I thought they look kind of like invisible. The figures of a tourist posing and taking pictures, they look happy, but they don't belong there, and they're kind of foreigners to it. So I kind of, looked at kind of things towards myself as immigrant and tried to fit in and explore different, being different sites, being different living in different, between cultures and between countries, and striving to fitting in. This is a black tree, and I made this one based on looking at my bedroom window. When I think about new work, I think about my emotion, and I think about things around me. And then I start, and then I choose the medium I want to go with. And this one is charcoal, in a charcoal animation. And I thought I like really kind of, I wanted to make some kind of like charcoal strokes to show kind of swaying tree. This is called On My Way Home Too. So this is based on myself looking at outside landscape that I was from the train, from the subway, on my way home during the pandemic, when the pandemic hits the peak and nobody was in the car, on the subway. My work is about various emotions that I feel during my journey from Korea to America, and from students to mother, and a teacher, and just a person. It's about micro-historical moments that I hope to explore, share the narrative that people can link to.